Okay.
No, you got PDF. Yeah, there you go.
So I'm just going to continue to assign people to breakout rooms. You can go ahead and join that breakout room for just a few minutes because we are going to be starting hopefully shortly. Okay.
That's why people are starting to come back.
Yeah, you don't have to come back. I'm actually gonna I'm going to close all the rooms shortly, so you don't have to worry about that.
Okay.
You automatically will come back after when I close the rooms. Just a chance to say hello to some people.
Yep.
You can go back into your room if you want.
I haven't been told to go back to my room in a long time.
Okay. Well, you've been a good person then.
If I put it there, you're going to block me.
No comment, eh, Janice?
What's that, Bob?
No comment, eh, Janice?
No, I'm just going to sit here quietly like a good girl and be in my room.
Oh yeah, I think that's what I'd like to do right about now. Just quietly sit in my room. It's like, oh my goodness. But this is great. This is wonderful to see so many people. You know, we're absolutely thrilled.
This is video ham radio.
Yeah, there you go. Not bad, eh?
Yeah. No QRM, no QRN.
I don't even know what that means. So no, there's not.
Noise and interference.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, there might be some noise and some interference. Who knows? One never knows.
Hi, Trish. Can you make this one co-host?
Yep. Which one is it, dear?
Yeah, it should be okay. Okay, I've got it. Well, no, I'm having trouble moving around breakout rooms. It never worked.
Same again. I know, but you can,
Okay. You all can talk among yourselves even here. Don't feel like you have to be quiet. Because I've got, I think at this point in time, to move everybody over is gonna we're probably gonna close pretty quickly. I'm gonna try and move some of you still over. Alan assigned to. Hello, Alan.
Hi, this is Mike, United MTV. Do you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Yeah. How do I get to the keynote presentation?
Just stay right where you are.
Okay. Thank you.
It's gonna be in just a few minutes.
Thank you.
That's amazing. I've never seen so many participants before in a Zoom meeting.
Well, and you're going to see a lot more.
Yeah.
It's why one of the reasons why we've used our account, because we can hold up to 500 people. So I'm kind of hoping we don't have that many, but at this point in time, because we're about ready to close the breakout rooms, we'll be doing that, and I'm not going to move all you. You all can just talk among yourselves, say hi, do whatever. If you haven't already added your call sign, you can do so to your name, either on the participants list. Click on your name and click on your name and rename, or click on the 3 dots in the upper right-hand corner of your picture, and you can rename that. Jose, I'm only seeing the top of your head. I hope you know. That's better. Okay, we're not seeing Scott or John at all, so that's all right. So, welcome everybody who's just coming in. You know, it's pretty amazing. I've got people out in the breakout rooms, and yet I'm already on 3 pages. So one of the things that you can do is in the upper right-hand corner, you probably have this little box with a whole bunch of dots. Looks like a little square with dots. You know, play with what your picture looks like, because I can't tell what it looks like. It, you know, right now mine is set so that I've got what I call the Brady Bunch view. It's gallery.
Is that Mom?
Gallery, yep.
Is that Mom? Who's Mom?
Oh, I thought she was locked out.
Mm-hmm.
Not Mom. I'm not Mom.
That hasn't started yet.
That was supposed to start at 11:30.
It's all these people.
No.
Well, I guess depending on what you are.
They said you can join it at
Each time.
Morning, Trish.
Hello. Who just said hi to me? Oh, Jeff.
It was Jeff. Yeah, good
Hi,
morning.
Jeff. How are you?
Good yourself?
Hanging in there.
We got this. We got this.
We got this. Not a problem.
What's your call, Trish?
I don't have one.
You don't? Oh.
I do not. I'm called Mom. I should put Mom.
There you go.
Mom after. That's my call sign. Mom.
Greetings, Mum, from sunny South Africa. Well, it's not so sunny now because the sun's going down.
Oh, it is. It is, Nigel. Lovely that you've been able to join us.
Well, a bit of a rush, but never mind. Question for you, Mum.
Yes, sir. Yes.
It makes you smile. And I really don't know you from a bar of soap. So.
That's okay. What can I do?
What DX have you got today?
I'm sorry?
I think one of your colleagues will translate for you. Maybe Bob. Victor Echo 3, Echo Tango Echo.
First of all, Nigel, you are DX. I haven't worked in South Africa before. That's where you're from.
Greetings.
So, Nigel, are you asking us to send out QSL cards after this?
There you go.
Well, not really. I'm just curious to know. I've had a quick squiz through the gallery of attendees, and there's this funny call sign, Victor Alpha, Victor, well, whatever, this strange one. And I only see one ZS.
I think you may be the only ZS. So.
Oh, so I'm at the wrong place.
You're welcome to join us. Not a problem.
Thank you.
I am just going to pop
Trish,
out.
If we can mute everybody.
Yep.
And we're going to breakout rooms and spotlight. What we're going to do is spotlight Jay, who's going to everybody.
Okay, yeah, I'm just. Okay, I'm actually going to mute everybody, and I'm going to close the rooms.
There we go. It's all. Unmuted myself, and Jay will get you spotlighted in just a second because you're the big wig, and Trish, you're closing the breakout rooms.
I did, so I'm going to spotlight Jay. Spotlight video, yes. Okay.
And for anybody who's not seeing, Jay, what you can do is in the top right corner of your screen, if you see a button that says speaker view, you can click on speaker view. And if it just says view, click on view and make sure that speaker view is the one that's checked off. So, Jay, shall we hand it over to you so you can get us started, please?
Absolutely. Thank you very much. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Canada 2020 conference and the RAC AGM. First off, I'd like to thank all my volunteers that have worked very, very hard to get this package put together for today and bring you this outstanding event. First thing I'd like to remind everyone, this is a first for Radio Amateurs of Canada. So we have tried to think of every possible problem, but if there are issues throughout the conference or the AGM today, we would like you to contact VA3 Delta 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 at rac.ca. That is Marcel and Trish, as you see at the top, our technical team. Big thanks to them for bringing this to us. So again, if there's any difficulties today, Victor Alpha 3 Delta 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 at rac.ca. At this time, I guess we will hand it off to our hosts to put you out to our first presentation, and that is hosted by the RAC President, Glenn MacDonell. Please enjoy the day, everyone, and thank you for attending. Off to you, Marcel.
So I'm just going to spotlight Glenn at the moment. So Glenn, I think I've spotlighted you. Make sure you're unmuted.
Yep, I am.
And I will spotlight our presenters in just a minute, but I would like you to, if you would, please just bring some greetings.
Okay, thank you very much, and thanks, Jay, for leading this whole exercise, and Trish and Marcel for doing all of the work that's required to have us appear, and the rest of the people be able to hear us and talk to us. This first session is going to deal with amateur radio during the global pandemic, and we described it as a fireside chat. It's an informal discussion amongst people who have a very broad perspective of what's happening in amateur radio around the world. I'll introduce them briefly now as Trish is working. Tim Ellam, who is president of the International Amateur Radio Union, BE6SH. Tim has been, as you can tell from his call sign, is from Alberta, has been involved in amateur radio for a very long time before, and in fact was one of the people involved in the negotiations that led to the formation of Radio Amateurs of Canada. And now as president of the IARU, works with leaders around the world in dealing with amateur radio issues. Roderick, K5UR, is president of the American Radio Relay League. And Rick's been president, it turns out, of the ARRL, exactly the same length of, for the same years as I have. And I have been able to meet him and talk with him at ARRL board meetings and at meetings like Dayton. Rick's been in radio amateur for 52 years. And Steve Thomas, general manager of the Radio Society of Great Britain. And actually, all of these people have seen or been involved in AGMs in the past. Tim, obviously, at the AGM in Alberta, where he spoke on the 25th anniversary of RAC. Rick was at our planning meeting and AGM in Moncton last year. And Steve Thomas, who comes regularly to Canada in the past, before becoming general manager, and as a ham, wanted to find out what we were up to. And he's been an associate member of RAC for a long time, even before he became general manager of the Radio Society of Great Britain. So I'd like to just go right now into the discussion. Or we're ready to go, Trish?
Yes, go ahead.
I see, okay. So are you going to, you're going to highlight Tim first, I guess, so you will see him in the center of the screen right now. Don't see him. And Tim, you're going to bring that up?
1 second.
Okay, well, he can start talking as you do that. I know there are 202 people at the meeting right now. So Tim, we've talked briefly about this before. It seems as though there are effects and challenges and at times opportunities at all levels that affect amateur radio. And I'd like you to start us off with the perspective internationally of what you see at the highest level. Are you involved with those we need to influence? So if you could let us know about that right now. You need to unmute.
Sure,
Yeah, you're okay.
I'm good.
Yeah.
Well, first, thank you, Glenn. Let me say thanks for the invitation, and it's a privilege to be able to have this discussion, and thanks to all the RAC organizers. So I'll make two initial points. The first is that, what does IARU do? Well, we attend meetings, obviously meetings of the ITU, various RTOs, and certain specific meetings such as CISPR, which is deals with EMC standards. All of those meetings have had to go online. And I know for years the ITU has been saying we've got to get a way of more participants in our meetings, so because some administrations cannot afford to go to Geneva. And what we see now is a massive rush for everyone to now get connected. So all of the meetings that we attend at the ITU or the RTO level have been moved to Zoom or other platforms, and they seem to be working quite well. What's missing from that is a lot of our work when we attend these meetings is done offline.
And when I say offline, I mean it's between meetings, it's discussions with various regulators and others, ITU officials, to discuss the various agenda items that are of interest to us. So that is something that we've had to adapt to, and it's not quite as easy doing that virtually as it would be in person. Now, one of the great positives of this, of course, is that our budget for travel this year has been quite reduced. So we are saving the monies that we have. And of course, IARU is funded by our member societies. So RAC and others will be pleased to hear that. The second effect that this pandemic has had is that the IARU does meet virtually. We try to meet virtually once or twice a year, but our main meetings take place in person. And the IARU Administrative Council meets once a year in conjunction with a regional meeting every year. And this year, it was supposed to be next month in Novi Sad, Serbia, the Region 1 conference. And obviously that cannot go ahead. And that has now being held as a virtual meeting for this year. And then certain aspects of that meeting will be pushed into an in-person meeting in 2021. One of the positive aspects of this is that member societies who would not normally be able to attend IARU conferences because of expense or timing issues are now able to participate virtually. So we are seeing more and more, some of the smaller societies are able to attend virtually, participate in the meetings, present papers and that type of thing. So that is a positive aspect of that. Otherwise, the work of the IARU continues virtually. We have had a couple of things we've had to put off. We are doing some testing on the effect of WPT, wireless power transfer. We were able to get one of the tests in Texas in March, but the next one is now up in the air, and that was scheduled for Germany next month. So some of those things have been impacted, but other than that, I think most of the IARU and its member societies have adapted quite nicely to moving things online.
Okay, thanks, Tim. Some of those things that you talked about internationally probably are affecting us nationally as well. I'd like Rick, maybe you to let us know from your perspective how the ARRL is being affected, and then after and maybe we'll see some things from Steve, and then we'll talk about the level of the clubs. Rick, K5UR, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Glenn. And y'all hear me okay, Glenn?
We do indeed.
Okay, good. Good to see everyone. And I recognize a good number of the call signs of the attendees here. And some I've met on the air over the years. And looking at some of them I met last year at Moncton. A year ago, last week, I was in Moncton and just had a wonderful time visiting with all the folks up there and attending the AGM and other meetings. So it's good to see you again. Well, like Tim alluded to, it's been a real challenging time with COVID, and the league is still operating under some real strict guidelines set forth by the state of Connecticut for ARRL headquarters and the employees. And we've got around 80 employees. And so as a business, just from a business perspective, it impacted us rather significantly because there were such tight restrictions on who could actually go to work. And we're still under a 50% rule there at ARRL headquarters. So we're going on now a good number of months, and it will proceed at least until February of next year, last I heard, of only operating about half staff at ARRL headquarters. So that's an impact on how you do business, especially from a member-driven or a customer-driven type organization. So when COVID came along and the restrictions started to be imposed, it hit us hard. And our team had to make some real major adjustments on who can be there, who's essential, how can we work at home and still answer and address member needs and get the job done. And so that's probably been one of the most foremost challenges we faced is keeping the business running, working remotely, How do we answer the phones? How do we do the mail? How do we just deliver the services that we need to for everyone? And the group has just done an outstanding job, and I've been real impressed with the team keeping their attitude positive and answering all the issues they've had to for members. One of the first challenges we had from a real broad perspective, aside from just running the business, was how do we conduct license exams out in the field? And we worked with the FCC and got clarification on April 30th, our Federal Communications Commission that does licensing oversight for all of our licensees, got confirmation from the FCC that we could do remote exam testing. So we spent a number of weeks helping establish protocol for our volunteer examiners out in the field so that they could do license exams remotely as needed. Of course, we'd already set up a protocol for doing the license exams in person, but that proved to be a real challenge, and testing was down significantly, of course, for a good while we all had to deal with the COVID-19 restrictions. So I'm proud of the group. Quickly made some adjustments and helped the field in terms of license exams. So hopefully we will see an uptick on that. Right now, we're down about 8% for the year on new licenses and down about 19% on upgrades. So you can see the direct impact COVID has had due to people's inability or not wanting to go to a group environment to take an exam. And that's the lowest figures we've had in about 15 years. So that's significant, that's substantial. And so hopefully that will turn around. The other thing that we noticed just almost immediately, of course, was we sanctioned a lot of HamFest, and HamFest started canceling. And that's a means of for the ARRL to get new members, to sell product. It's a way for, of course, the businesses to go in and sell their product. And so there was an immediate effect, negative effect there. We've lost about 207 HamFest have been canceled that we were involved with in one way or another between March of this year and February of next year. 207 are gone. And so that's a significant impact there. Interestingly, like Tim and Glenn, you were talking about earlier, the migration to virtual conferencing is that we have seen a number of these groups sort of test some planning for virtual HamFest, like that QSO Today virtual HamFest. I think it had a couple of thousand attendees. So I think we'll see probably in next year, perhaps some of these HamFest try to do a virtual HamFest, depending on how these restrictions stay in force. Of course, Dayton was canceled, and some of the other big ones, and it's unknown yet, what effect that's going to have next year. But that obviously was a pretty significant event that happened there. I think we'll talk about clubs in it here again in a few minutes. But and the other thing, of course, is businesses. Naturally, the businesses we deal with were affected. The radio businesses. Unfortunately, we're already getting reports that some of them are not going to make it. Some of them have already closed their doors. Some of them are not going to try to adapt, and that's unfortunate. Just as a measuring stick for us, with QST Magazine, our advertising is down a number of percentage points simply because businesses have sort of contracted due to COVID-19, and of course that impacts us and everyone, because that's where we get our revenue to provide the services we do at headquarters. So, Glenn, those are three areas right there that has impacted us substantially thus far that we're still trying to work through. Glenn.
Okay, thanks. And Steve, just before you talk, I'll make a few comments picking up on some of the things that Rick had said. because it's a similar situation in Canada, and I know you're going to say something similar about this afterwards. We've actually had really good cooperation from our regulator in terms of being able to enable remote examinations, or as you'd say, I guess in the UK, Steve, invigilated exams. Yeah. Fairly early on, they told, well, we asked, and they had already decided how they would do it. If anything, the issue might be that not all of our examiners have picked up on it. And like you, as I look at the numbers of new hams in the beginning of this year, we're down a little bit in our new hams, in those who get our first level. Interestingly, and it's probably because some of our responses, we knew that clubs couldn't organize courses. So we've started organizing courses that are interactive, like this session right now, where for both basic and our advanced level. And what I find interesting and a lot of people have come out, and I found that we've actually had more advanced level qualifications or certifications in this part of the year, this year, than we have in the past. So those are just a couple of other things. But Steve, and obviously the business affects us not nearly as much with only two permanent staff. But we did have work that was being done by volunteers that could come into our office that has had to stop because we can't put even 4 people into a small space. And that, I think, has definitely made it harder. But Steve, I'd like to hear what's happening in Great Britain.
Yeah, okay. Well, thanks, Glenn. It's great to be with you. Thanks very much for the invite. First of all, let's start with the impact it had on the RSGB, the staff, the same as Rick said. So we had to move everybody out of the office very quickly. We did that at the end of March. We haven't got as many staff. We've got 16, 10 full-time, 6 part-time. We had everybody out by the end of March. So a completely new way of working for us, video calls between the staff. But we had all sorts of other problems as well. We sell a lot of books, obviously, and we ship those out from some warehouses. One of those had to close. So the staff started sending books out from home, receiving parcels at home. It was one of those, whatever it took to make it carry on, make the business carry on. But all the way through this, we were seeing a huge increase in interest in amateur radio. So the staff were working fantastically, and the volunteers as well. I'll come to some of those in a second. Some of those were working fantastically well to keep this, to fuel that interest that was coming in from amateur radio. So we did all sorts of other things as well. We put on webinars that we've made available to people. We ran some daytime contests for those people who were stuck at home, and we had some great take up for that. Entrance from 30 countries in some of those. We called it the Hope QSO party. But generally it was a completely new way of working, but we carried on and did everything that we possibly could to keep the business going. One of the things, again, like Rick and yourselves, that we started doing remote invigilation of exams. And we were doing that with a webcam. And we've got now a fantastic group of volunteer remote invigilators. We've got about a team of 35 of those or thereabouts at the moment. And they've enabled people to come into amateur radio during the lockdown. And we've seen a huge, huge increase. We've seen 1,800 people take the foundation exam over the 5 months. And that's more than 3 times we normally see. So we've seen nearly 4 times in those months in the year. And we're starting to see those people now go on and progress into the intermediate level. We've got 3 levels of licensing. So we're even seeing progression from those people that have just joined going straight into intermediate. And it's absolutely fantastic. And we've also seen a knock-on effect into our membership as well. Our membership has gone up. We're back up to the membership levels that we haven't seen since 2011. So it's a different story in different countries. It's really interesting to hear. So we've seen a really positive result from it. Now, there's been some groups that have run online training courses. So we haven't run those from the RSGB. There's been some other groups that have been absolutely fantastic running those training courses online, which means people could do the online training and then go straight to do the online exam with us afterwards. and hopefully join the RSGB as a result. It's been a wonderful progression for us, but it's been a huge challenge while working from home and doing everything remotely, and it's been quite a journey. That's what I'm going to describe it as, I think. And the clubs, they've all been trying to do online. I've seen somebody else's screen.
So could this person who just inadvertently hit the share screen button please turn your screen off?
I'll keep talking. Okay. And the clubs have been trying to arrange online talks and things like that. I think we're going to go on to clubs in a while, but so that's really the view from the RSGB, is that we've seen a tremendous amount of change, but a tremendous amount of growth within that change. It's been quite a journey.
Okay, that's great, Steve. We anecdotally we see things. People who are running the courses have reported on several people who wrote the basic exam one day and in fact got into a couple of our courses, and over a short period of time have gone from not being a ham to being at the highest level of certification, because we think because it's something they always wanted to do, and they have the time and the opportunity now. So Tim, I wonder, in your discussions with regions and at these meetings, have the organizations been reporting on developments? Maybe the timing for meetings hasn't been right for that to come out. Do you have anything to add, Tim? Go ahead.
No, but some of the things the regions do, like the YODA Young People on the Air activities have become virtual, for example, and there's some good things there. I think some of our member societies have taken a bit longer to get used to a virtual platform than others, and some have jumped right into it. But mostly people have made, I think, pretty good attempts to try to keep some of the activities going, whether that be meetings or other on-the-air activities.
One of the things I've noticed, for example, is the YODA Region 1 people now have YouTube, and it looks like people from all around the world are joining into their monthly sessions.
That's correct. They've had a very good take up, perhaps because of the age, but they've had good take up on the YouTube sessions and other virtual platforms as well.
Okay, that's great. Well, maybe turning now to to what we see. Well, Rick talked some things about. Both of us have talked a bit about clubs and what's happening with clubs in terms of making the transition. I wonder if maybe there are some particular opportunities that have come up for any of the organizations in this period that they'd want to talk about. I know, Steve, you had told me earlier about a publicity campaign that you managed to organize. So maybe you could share that information.
Oh, definitely can do. Right, I suppose when we were just moving out of the office, we had a call from somebody called Paul Devlin, G1 SMP, who works for the National Health Service, the NHS. Now, they were having some enormous challenges around that time, but Paul suggested to us that we ran a joint campaign, and it's turned out to be the largest media campaign the RSGB has ever run, and way beyond anything we expected. It really has been. We sent out an enormous number of press releases, followed it up with phone calls. It took a while to get going, took a while to get the interest, but we've had a fantastic response, and we continue to have a fantastic response from the media. It's
what were you asking people to do?
Well, we took a two-pronged approach to it. One was to remind people about existing amateurs, remind them about amateur radio, to keep in contact with each other while they were locked down from home, the things that we were probably doing anyway, but encouraging them to do more, keep in touch with their club members, keeping in touch with fellow amateurs, try something new. And while we were doing that, we were also publicising amateur radio to those people who may not have thought about it or had left it many years ago. And we've seen a good number of people returning to amateur radio. So, I mean, the media campaign has been absolutely amazing. We highlighted one example. We highlighted a 10-year-old boy called William who passed his test, and that was in one of the national newspapers. And they also put it on their website, and we know they got 1.5 million views of that article. So we're talking millions. And if we go across the whole campaign, we've used a media tracking company, and we know we're probably approaching 30 million views of the publicity that we've put out. And we think that's driven people to come to amateur radio new or come back to amateur radio who've done it before. And that's been fantastic. If we look at the mix of people joining the RSGB, there's a mix of the new people and a mix of those returning to it. So it's been amazing, and it continues. But the good stories we're having of sort of youngsters joining, or good stories of people joining who haven't tried it for 30 years or so and they're coming back to it, we're then feeding those back through the media. And they're featuring amateur radio like we've never seen before. It's, again, been thoroughly positive experience.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I guess in some ways we don't have the statistics that you did, but when we first announced when we first announced our course, actually we started with an advanced course before the basic course. We were just sort of overwhelmed with the number of people who wanted to take it, and we've completed 2 rounds of both. You can get 2 levels of certification out of our basic course that have a slightly different system if you get a high enough mark. So we have finished 2 rounds of the advanced course. We're already scheduling the next round. We're finishing up the 2nd round of basic, and we'll have another one of that in the new year. We're also working, though, we know that this is something that's important for clubs. But actually, before I go to that point, one thing that both the remote exams and the online courses have done is they've made it easier for radio amateurs in parts of the country who don't have nearby clubs to become radio amateurs, which is one of the challenges in a country that goes 5,500 kilometers across. We're hoping that some of the ability to be able to do, especially examinations are the challenge. You can always do remote teaching to anywhere that has internet, although some places don't have good internet. It's another story. So that might be one of the things that we carry through. I wonder, Rick, or Tim, if you're thinking of, maybe we'll go to Tim first, any other things about what lessons that we've learned from what's happened so far that might affect how things will operate in the future?
I think that it's forced some of the institutions that we attend, like the ITU and various regional telecom organizations, to think how they conduct business, that traveling to Geneva or other parts of the world to have these meetings may not be the best way to proceed. There was declining attendance anyway in some of the ITU meetings simply because of the cost of travel. Some of the administrations had to cut back on the people that were going. So I think you'll see these institutions embrace this as they have embraced it, and continue to encourage for at least some meetings to continue online. And I think just generally for people that we work with in these meetings, they've accepted and embraced some of this new technology more than they would have had this pandemic not happened. So for us, it's good. It means there's a cost savings, obviously, if we don't have to travel for some of these meetings. The only downside is the adjusting for the time zones. I know for one of our, the Region 3 Executive Committee meeting next week, I attend that, but it starts at 11 o'clock, 11 p.m. my time. So that's one of the drawbacks, but it's one of the things we adapt to.
Yeah, well, actually, I certainly know about time zones. And the international meetings of amateur radio on the International Space Station that happen monthly happen at 7 o'clock in the morning my time, which is 4 in the morning in California, and evening in Russia. You know, I'm sure that's the sort of thing that you're working through as well. So what about you, Rick, in terms of thinking of sort of where we are right now? Are there some things that you are thinking might be done differently as a result of what we've learned through the process so far? Or are we still scrambling to kind of keep things going? What do you think?
I think it has, COVID-19 has made us change for the future, no doubt in my mind. Tim mentioned about the meetings as an example. That has impacted us already. Before, when we've got a number of board committees and a number of other subcommittees and various committees that are assigned to do work and projects through the year. And before, a number of those committees might meet in person and have a small number of people there, for example, obviously just the committee. Now, because everyone is used to virtual meetings like Zoom, it has opened up the opportunity, for example, for a lot more people to attend meetings. We might have a committee meeting that would have 6 or 7 people before, and now we can tell our board, well, we're going to have a committee meeting next weekend of such and such committee, and you can have an audience of the full board of directors as an example instead. So, because it's going to be done virtually instead of in person. And I think that's teed up, obviously, the questions from some about, is this not a better approach for the future, to get more people involved and, like Tim alluded to, saving money along the way and paying people to go somewhere? Can we not just have these virtual meetings? And of course, there's pluses and minuses to virtual meetings. So I believe, yes, it has changed the way we're going to be looking at conducting the business in the future. And let me back up and say something about clubs that Steve was mentioning as well. We had put out some information. We've got a COVID-19 webpage on our webpage with a lot of resource information. And we'd put out some information back earlier in the year to our clubs, giving them some ideas on things to consider when we saw this COVID-19 begin to impact meetings and the restrictions imposed by the various states. And we had suggested to clubs that they learn how to do virtual conferencing with their meetings, along with some other things, and challenge the clubs that, now's the time to look at your, readiness capabilities. Like, the Amateur Radio Emergency Service, ARRS, had to go through some thoughts about, well, how do we respond in emergencies, for example, if we've got all these restrictions? So the clubs going back to the clubs, they were really hit out there in the field organization and struggled with how do we do our business as a club? And so that was a real challenge. And then Field Day came along. Y'all are familiar with our Field Day, which is a huge event. I describe Field Day as it's the collection of the largest number of communicators on the face of the earth. And it is, throughout the face of the earth, there's more hams on the air communicating than any other place on the face of the earth. And so we've got Field Day out there, and people are struggling with, what are we going to do? Because we can't be beside each other. We're supposed to social distance. And of course, a lot of clubs are involved in Field Day. So that was probably one of the first real tests, of how do we organize as a club and get things done. And we challenge people to say, well, that's what amateur radio is about in some regards, is readiness and adapting and thinking out of the box, so to speak, to get where you need to go and get things done. So that's kind of been interesting to see how the clubs have evolved, because, like I said, Glenn, I think you and I were talking, I said, clubs are struggling right now. That's everywhere. This new generation, the people coming behind me, they don't like to join. They're not joiners. And you go to club meetings and it's a bunch of folks that look like all of us on all the pictures I'm seeing. There's not a lot of younger generation folks joining clubs. So there's an immediate challenge in that regard. So you've got that generation issue and this, I don't want to change, and we've always done it this way, that kind of thing. So it's been a real challenge, when we look at it in that regard. And one last thing about the clubs, though, is I'm a real big proponent of clubs. I think they're so important, particularly in today's world. The ARRL has got posted right now a job for a club coordinator. And we're going to hire a person whose job is going to be to work with clubs, amateur radio clubs, and help them with programs, help them rebuild, offer assistance. We're going to dedicate a person to do strictly activities for clubs going into 2021. Glenn?
Okay, thanks, Rick. Steve, what do you think about some of either more stuff about clubs, or what do you think we've learned so far that are going to be part of the life of amateur radio in Great Britain in the future?
I think it's changed. And I think in some ways there's no going back. I think there was a group of people that were waiting to take or wanting to take radio amateur exams that perhaps couldn't get to a club. You know, it was too far, or perhaps when they ran the courses that it wasn't suitable for them. So now with online training and online exams, I think we've opened up a new market. It's going to be very difficult to go back. I think the future is probably a blend of the two. People learn in different ways. People want to, but some people want to engage with clubs. Some people don't, are quite happy doing it online. But I think the clubs are incredibly important for the future. And very similar to what Rick just said, even yesterday, I was on the RSGB board call, and we were talking about how our regional team could engage with the clubs or help clubs re-engage with these new people that are joining that haven't been near a club because the training hasn't been run by clubs. It's been, you know, run online. So there's a whole sort of joining up these new people, supporting them in a different way. And we can do some of that with, you know, webinars and, you know, our online sessions and, you know, those sort of things. But I think to engage the clubs with those new people is important. And, you know, we've got to work on that as well with the clubs. But I think the clubs have been going some way towards it by running, you know, the forward-looking ones of running online webinars and things like that, you know, inviting international speakers and making it interesting. That gives the clubs, you know, people a good reason to join those clubs. And I think they now need to look at doing practical things with these new people that are joining amateur radio, because if you learn online and you take the test online, you don't get to do practical things with other amateurs, like Rick's field day. That's a hugely important part of field day, isn't it? Doing practical things and introducing people to doing practical things. And I think that's where clubs will need to focus for these newcomers, and we'll do the same thing. So I think that, you know, the world has changed. But maybe we've just opened it up for some different people to come in, maybe some modern thinkers, some different people, some younger people into amateur radio, which is fantastic.
Okay, thanks. Maybe I'll say a few things about our very much similar experience for us in Canada. One of the things we've been discussing in our board and executive meetings are our role vis-a-vis the clubs. Certainly in the time when clubs can't do things, we've stepped in to help make sure that courses happen. We know that clubs are really important. We don't know how quickly the situation will change that clubs will be able to meet again. You know, people are placing a lot of hope in vaccines, and an acceptable vaccine might work for 30% of the people. Even something like a good flu vaccine works for half. When we have, as Rick mentioned, and a lot of us noticed, a lot of older people in our group, partly because when you have time on your hands, you start doing more of this stuff. Mm-hmm. We do have younger people, but we will always have a lot of them. So there may even come a time when it becomes possible for people to meet if they're willing to accept a certain level of risk, and some people aren't going to. And we nationally and we as clubs are going to have to think of how we accommodate that. Probably it's using some of the things like we're doing now. It's much more of a challenge actually though for a club to think of having an in-person meeting and also televise it or put it out on the internet than having a straight meeting like this. So there's a lot for us to think about. I guess the other thing is in terms of new people coming in, and actually one thing I'm going to ask you about, Steve, because I know about this one before. We know anecdotally that people are coming back because we hear them on nets. They say, you know, I had been doing my techie things elsewhere and now I can't do them, and I have a ham license, but I haven't really done much for a while. and they show up on nets and they're getting involved. But I think in the UK, where you have had some insight because of the way you handle licensing, I think you've got some statistics that people would find interesting.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I've got the numbers, but
the proportions even we don't know, because we're licensed for life. You know, once you pass the exam, you're there until someone tells our regulator you're dead.
Yeah. Well, in the UK, we do the license is for life, as long as you tell the regulator every 5 years that you're still there. So it's sort of, you know, you renew it perpetually. That's how it works. But if they go more past the 5 years, then they have to reapply. And if they've got their paper license or some evidence that they held a license, then they can go straight to Ofcom. And if they haven't, they tend to come to us, and we've got on the shelf all of the historic call books, and we can give them some proof. And during sort of April and May, we were handling a phenomenal number of requests of people saying they'd seen the media campaign, they wanted to come back to amateur radio, could we help them? And we were doing 30 or 40 of these call book lookups a week, and those people were going off to Ofcom, and we don't see them all, because if they've got their evidence, they go straight to Ofcom. And then we look at the people joining the RSGB, and we always in Radcom we always publish the lists, and there was a fair number in those lists. We started off seeing about 50-50 with new people, new call signs, and old call signs each month, and that was great. I absolutely love people coming back, because it proves that something's changed, or we're doing something different, or amateur radio has changed. They've got their interest back. And I love seeing the newcomers as well. You know, for obvious reasons, we've got to make the make the pool of radio amateurs larger. So I enjoy both. I really do. But we've seen a fantastic number of people coming back as well as joining new.
Okay, and it's good to hear from Rick that the increases in the ARRL, although as you said, Rick, it might be recovery from a dues increase, but there could be several things with that. I wonder at this point, we don't pause for a bit. If anyone wants to ask questions to us, we can do that. We have to wrap this session up in about 10 minutes. So if there are people with questions, I guess we could go ahead and, oh, this is a bit different because it's not a webinar. So,
so Glenn, it's
yes?
Trish. If people could type their questions into the chat section,
okay, that
right. Would be the best. So if you've got a question, please do that as well. I've been pushing out some information in that chat section. I'm going to do it again, how to get onto the breakout session. So if you've got a question, please type it into the chat section.
Okay, now in fact, I'm just looking over here at the chat.
There's nothing
session.
yet for a question.
Okay, so yeah, there have been comments from various people, but at this point, any of you with questions, please type them into to the chat box that's over to the right side of your screen.
Okay, so have you got it open, Glenn? It's
mine is open, yes.
So Chris Carpenter has just said,
oh, yes,
I'm just getting
right.
into, if you would go ahead and respond to that.
Okay, so Chris asks, I'm just getting into amateur radio. Does anyone know, okay, of a local club in the Cranbrook, Fernie, Sproulwood, BC, East Kootenay area? I'm going to ask because I think he's on the line, our director from British Columbia. But one of the other things I will say to everyone who's here is that on the Radio Amateurs of Canada website, we have a list, we have a place where clubs can post information on where they are and what they're doing. And that's one place to look. I wondered, is there someone from BC who wants to pick up this, would know that particular question? We may have to get back to you afterwards, Chris. Oh, and can't see if, let me see who's here. Okay, here's the link, and this would be the easiest way to do it. The link is actually in the chat box. You go to the RAC website, and it's called Affiliated Club Listing. Now that lists all of the clubs that have affiliated with us. It's not a complete list of all clubs in Canada. Most of the active clubs tend to affiliate. Okay, there's
I think there's a question for Steve.
Yeah, Steve, did you see that one? Comment on
no.
the impact on IOTA?
What was the question?
Any comments on the impact of islands on the air?
Well, it was the Islands on the Air contest, you know, that it impacted that quite badly because of people not being able to travel in groups and enter the contest that way. The Islands on the Air program now is separate to the RSGB, but still very good friends of ours. But I don't know the impact on the people collecting islands at the moment.
Okay. Thank you. A couple of other questions from Mike V3 IPC asks if these sessions are being recorded so that they're available to view, and they are being recorded. Radio Amateurs of Canada has a YouTube website. In fact, some people may be watching this on YouTube rather than through Zoom. And we're recording them through YouTube, and we will have them available there sometime in the future. We'll probably take a look at what the quality and such things are, just to double check them before, and we'll announce when they're public. Okay, now there was a point.
Well, let me speak to that. The makerspace. Sure. Yeah, this is Rick. Let me tell I'll keep it brief because I know we're going to be running out of time, but this is a story that was very telling to me. I think these maker fairs, the maker space is great. I happened to be in Europe where they were having one a couple of 3 years ago, and I was just stunned at the innovation and inventions that those young kids had. It was remarkable. The States, although unfortunately they have not seemed to develop the maker fairs like I saw over in Europe, but we have tried to integrate into those spaces at times and not been too successful for whatever reason. But a couple of years ago, I think I'd gone to Pacificon out in Oakland, and I heard that there was a maker fair in Oakland on the way to the airport. And so I stopped by there, and it was a pretty big maker fair at a high school. And so I was walking, and there was 2 clubs set up. I was told there was 2 clubs set up. So I was going to go by and say hello to the clubs, you know, and see what they had and all. And so I saw one of them up ahead of me as I walked up. And so I stopped for a minute just to observe the reaction of the crowd walking by. And I don't remember which club it was, but they had a really nice setup with a couple of stations, a nice tent. I mean, just a really nice setup. But what struck me was nobody was stopping. They were just walking right on by, and they were going to the other tents and the other exhibits. And it's just an observation that I had is, to me, I would have wanted to have stopped, obviously, but to that 12-year-old or that 10-year-old, they just sort of walked on by. So anyway, I went over and met the club and talked to them for a while. And then I said, well, there's supposed to be another club here. And they said, yeah, it's on up the way. And they told me where. So I went on up to that club. And I also stopped before I got to it and watched the reaction of people walking by that club. Now, interestingly, that club had a satellite system set up, had their laptop out there with their radio, in other words, a computer there, and they had people stopping by more than the other club did. And I think it was because, you know, this is a computer and it's computer related, and they saw things instead of the, you know, the big radio sitting there. And I thought that was an interesting observation and telling to me. And that correlates with something that I've seen in a lot of presentations I've done to schools. If you talk about presentations with a theme that I did for 50 years out there, you're not going to hit the mark with a younger group. You go in there and you start showing them pretty QSL cards. I talk all over the world. It doesn't make an impact. But you start talking about software-defined radios, Raspberry Pi, the integration of computers into the radios that we use, things like that, and it makes a difference. It makes a huge difference. So I think that makerspace is one that we've got to find a way to get a hold of for that next generation.
Yeah, Rick, it reminds me of one of the first times I went to, well, I actually noticed it every time I've been to Hamvention. If you walk around the Hamvention floor and go over to where people are talking about software-defined radio, the average age of people in the audience drops about 20 or 30 years.
Hey, Glenn, can I just chime in here?
Sure, go ahead.
Something that follow up with what Rick said, because I agree with Rick fully. And I think too many times clubs go to young people and tell them about amateur radio. And what we should be doing is actually listening to what interests them and then telling them how amateur radio can enhance that or perhaps even expand that. And, you know, what always strikes me when I was doing a presentation at a university club is that people were interested in drone technology, and how they could expand the operation of those drones using some of the amateur frequencies. So I think that's something we miss. But the other thing I'd note here is that events such as this are fantastic. I mean, if you look at the chat that's going back and forth about interesting things that various clubs and organizations are doing, not only in Canada, but in the US, there's a lot of good information here. And I think this just shows you the benefits of having virtual conferences such as this.
Okay, thank you very much. I just remind people that you can save the chat thing by clicking on file in the bottom part of it, because there's a lot of good information there, as was said. The one other thing that I think of about working with young people that we've seen that's interesting, it almost goes a bit the other way. Young, it depends on the age, but we've been doing things at science fairs and such things for a few years now. And young people, especially the maybe preteens, like codes. And the idea of sending their name in Morse code really grabs people. We had people getting so excited, they went over to get their friends to bring them back so that they could do that. So it's an interesting, you have to understand, as you said, the mix of interests of the people that you're talking to at the time when you're doing it. We have one more minute. Is anything else? Someone see a question that they would want to deal with?
Can I just, at the risk of having the last word, Glenn, I do note that in many of our member societies in Region 3, and I'm thinking of Indonesia, China, the Chinese Radio Association, and the Thai Society, have huge numbers of younger amateurs, and certainly when I go to these conferences, it's a marked difference between going to a conference in other regions that you see so many younger amateurs. And it'd be good, I think, to have some of those societies explain how they're attracting younger amateurs into the hobby.
Okay, thank you. Well, we've reached 12:55, the time for this session to end. So I just call your attention to to Trisha's message to get to your next session, and you can just go to your chat thing and click on the link. Please go to the Conference 2020 link. That's so the easiest thing is just open this and click on that link.
I'm getting them.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Trish.
Thanks, Glenn.